Little lost fawn begged humans to save it, and the whole world was stunned. The morning mist hung low over Route 47, a winding two-lane highway that cut through the forested hills of northern Oregon. It was early June, and the Douglas firs stood tall and dense on either side of the road, their branches heavy with moisture from the previous night's rain. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles, and the only sounds were the distant calls of crows and the occasional hum of a car engine breaking the silence. Sarah Mitchell was driving home from her night shift at the hospital in Eugene, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She'd been an ER nurse for 12 years, and the weight of another long night, 3 trauma cases, 1 cardiac arrest, and a child with pneumonia sat heavy in her chest. All she wanted was to get home, kiss her sleeping daughter on the forehead, and collapse into bed. The road ahead was empty, just grey asphalt disappearing into the fog. Then she saw it. At first it looked like a shadow in the middle of the road, a dark smudge against the pale morning light. Sarah slowed instinctively, her foot easing off the gas pedal. As she got closer, the shape became clearer, small, delicate, with legs folded beneath it. A fawn, a baby deer, no more than a few weeks old, lying motionless in the center of the lane. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and stay with us. Sarah's heart clenched. She pulled the car to the shoulder and turned on her hazard lights, the rhythmic clicking filling the quiet cabin. For a moment she sat there, hands still gripping the steering wheel, debating whether to get out. She knew the rules. Never approach wild animals, especially young ones. The mother could be nearby. Touching a fawn could cause the mother to abandon it, but something about the way the little creature lay there, so still, so vulnerable, pulled at her. She opened the door and stepped out onto the damp asphalt. The air was cool against her skin, and the mist clung to her scrubs. She approached slowly, her footsteps soft, her breathing shallow. The fawn didn't move. Its coat was a rich, reddish-brown, dappled with white spots that looked like tiny stars scattered across its back. Its ears were large and velvet-soft, twitching faintly with each breath. Its eyes, deep, liquid brown, were open and staring directly at her. And then it made a sound. It was quiet at first, barely audible over the rustling of leaves in the wind. A soft, desperate bleat. The fawn's mouth opened slightly, and the sound came again, louder this time, more insistent. It wasn't the call of a frightened animal running from danger. It was something else, something that sounded almost pleading. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She crouched down a few feet away, scanning the roadside for any sign of the mother. Nothing, just the thick wall of trees and the fog swirling through the underbrush. She looked back at the fawn. It was trying to stand, its thin legs trembling as it struggled to rise. One of its hind legs gave out immediately, and it collapsed back onto the road with a soft thud. The bleat came again, more urgent now, and the fawn's eyes never left Sarah's face. "Oh, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "Where's your mama?" She scanned the area again, more carefully this time. There were no tire marks, no signs of a collision, no blood. But the fawn was clearly in distress. Its breathing was rapid and shallow, and when it tried to stand again, the same leg buckled beneath it. Injured, alone, and directly in the path of any car that might come speeding around the bend. Sarah pulled out her phone and checked the signal. 1 bar. Enough. She dialed the non-emergency wildlife hotline she'd saved months ago after finding an injured owl in her backyard. The line rang 4 times before a gruff male voice answered. "Oregon Wildlife Services, this is Dan." "Hi, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm on Route 47, about 15 miles north of Eugene. There's a fawn in the middle of the road. It's injured. Looks like its leg might be broken. It won't move, and there's no sign of the mother." There was a pause on the other end. "How long have you been there?" "Just a few minutes." "Okay, don't touch it. The mother could be nearby. Deer sometimes leave their fawns for hours while they forage. If you move it, she won't be able to find it." "I understand that," Sarah said, her voice firm but controlled. "But it's in the middle of the road. A car is going to hit it, and it's injured. It keeps trying to stand and falling." Another pause. She could hear papers rustling in the background. "We're short-staffed this week. Earliest I can get someone out there is this afternoon." "This afternoon?" Sarah's voice rose despite herself. "It's lying in the road. It could be dead by then." "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but—" "Its leg is broken," Sarah interrupted. "It's terrified, and it's looking at me like it's asking for help." Dan sighed. "Look, if you're really worried, you can contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. There's one about 30 miles south of you, Green Valley Wildlife Center. I can give you the number." Sarah's hand tightened around the phone. "Yes, please." He rattled off the number, and Sarah scribbled it onto the back of a receipt she found in her pocket. She thanked him and hung up, immediately dialing the new number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail. "You've reached Green Valley Wildlife Center. We're currently closed. Our hours are Tuesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you've found an injured animal, please leave a message with your name, number, and location, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible." Sarah hung up without leaving a message. She looked back at the fawn. It was still staring at her, its body trembling now, whether from pain or fear she couldn't tell. Another car could come at any moment. The fog was thick, visibility poor. If someone came around that curve too fast, she made a decision. Sarah walked back to her car and opened the trunk. Inside, she kept a small emergency kit, blankets, a first aid box, bottled water, and a collapsible crate she used for transporting donations to the animal shelter. She pulled out the softest blanket and approached the fawn again, moving slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "It's okay, baby. I'm going to help you. I promise." The fawn didn't run. It didn't even flinch. It just looked at her with those enormous, trusting eyes and let out one more soft bleat. Sarah's hands were shaking as she knelt down and gently draped the blanket over the tiny body. The fawn was even smaller up close, fragile, impossibly delicate. She could feel its rapid heartbeat through the fabric as she carefully scooped it into her arms. It weighed almost nothing. She carried it to the car, moving as smoothly as she could to avoid jostling the injured leg. The fawn rested its head against her chest, its warm breath tickling her neck. Sarah placed it gently in the crate, cushioning it with the rest of the blanket, and closed the hatch. She climbed back into the driver's seat, her heart pounding, her mind racing. She had no idea what she was going to do next, but as she pulled back onto the highway and glanced in the rearview mirror at the small, spotted creature lying quietly in the back, one thing was clear. She couldn't leave it there. Not like that. Not alone. The fog was beginning to lift as Sarah drove south, the sun breaking through the clouds in pale golden streaks. And in the back of her car, the little fawn closed its eyes, and for the first time that morning, stopped trembling. Sarah drove with one hand on the wheel, the other reaching back every few minutes to touch the edge of the crate, as if to reassure herself the fawn was still there. The highway stretched ahead, empty and quiet, and her mind churned with questions she couldn't answer. What was she supposed to do now? She wasn't a veterinarian. She wasn't a wildlife expert. She was a nurse who dealt with human patients, not fragile forest creatures with broken legs and eyes that seemed to look straight into her soul. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from her husband, Marcus. "You on your way home? Lily's asking for you." Sarah's chest tightened. Lily. Her 7-year-old daughter, who loved animals more than anything in the world, who cried when they watched nature documentaries and a baby elephant got separated from its herd, who begged for a puppy every birthday and Christmas, even though their landlord didn't allow pets. What would Lily say if she knew what her mother had just done? Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror again. The fawn was still lying down, its eyes half closed, its breathing steady but shallow. She typed back quickly, "Almost home. Something came up. I'll explain when I get there." She put the phone down and focused on the road. The fog was lifting now, revealing the full expanse of forest on either side. Tall pines, sprawling oaks, thick underbrush dotted with wildflowers. This was deer country. She'd seen them grazing by the roadside dozens of times, graceful and watchful, their ears swiveling at the slightest sound. But she'd never been this close to one, never held one in her arms. The memory of the fawn's weight against her chest, its tiny heart beating so fast, made her throat tighten. By the time Sarah pulled into the gravel driveway of her small rental house on the outskirts of town, the sun had fully emerged. The house was modest, a two-bedroom cottage with peeling yellow paint and a sagging front porch. But it was home. Marcus's truck was parked out front, and through the kitchen window, she could see him moving around inside, probably making breakfast. Sarah sat in the car for a moment, gathering herself. Then she opened the door and stepped out, moving to the back to check on the fawn. It was awake now, its eyes bright and alert, watching her with that same intensity as before. It made a soft sound, not quite a bleat, more like a quiet hum, and Sarah's heart melted all over again. "Hang on, sweetheart," she whispered. "Let me get some help." She left the hatch open for air and walked quickly to the front door. Before she could even turn the knob, it swung open, and Lily came barreling out, her dark curls bouncing, her face lit up with excitement. "Mommy, you're home! Daddy made pancakes and—" "Lily, baby, I need you to do something very important for me," Sarah said, crouching down to her daughter's level. "I need you to stay calm and quiet, okay? Can you do that?" Lily's eyes widened. "Why? What's wrong?" Marcus appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. "Sarah, everything okay?" Sarah looked up at him. "I need your help, both of you." She led them to the car and opened the hatch wider. Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The fawn looked up at them, its ears twitching, and let out another soft hum. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "Sarah, is that a fawn?" "It was in the middle of the road," Sarah said quickly, the words tumbling out. "Its leg is injured. I waited, but there was no mother. I called wildlife services, but they can't come until this afternoon, and I couldn't just leave it there. A car would have hit it." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. Okay. So, what's the plan?" "I don't know yet," Sarah admitted, "but I couldn't leave it." Lily had climbed halfway into the trunk, her face inches from the crate. "Hi, baby," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Don't be scared. We're going to help you." The fawn blinked at her, and for a moment the two of them just stared at each other, a little girl with wild curls and a little deer with spotted fur, connected by something unspoken and profound. "We need to get it inside," Marcus said finally, "and we need to call someone who knows what they're doing." Together, they carefully carried the crate into the house, setting it down in the corner of the living room. Sarah grabbed her laptop and started searching for veterinarians who treated wildlife. Most of the clinics she called either didn't handle deer or required permits she didn't have. One receptionist told her it was illegal to keep a wild deer without a license. Another said they were booked solid for the week. Frustration clawed at her chest. She looked over at the fawn, which was now sitting up in the crate, its injured leg tucked awkwardly beneath it. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor beside it, humming softly, her small hand resting on the edge of the crate. "Mommy, what's its name?" Lily asked without looking up. "It doesn't have a name, honey. It's a wild animal. Can we call it Clover? It looks like a clover." Sarah opened her mouth to explain why naming it wasn't a good idea, that it would make it harder to let go, but the words died in her throat. The fawn did look like a clover, something soft and delicate and impossibly precious. "Okay," Sarah said quietly, "Clover it is." Marcus knelt down beside Lily, examining the fawn's leg from a distance. "It's definitely injured. See how it won't put weight on it? Could be a fracture, could be a sprain. Hard to tell without an X-ray." "We need to feed it," Lily said suddenly. "Babies need milk." Sarah had already thought of that. Deer milk is different from cow milk. We can't just give it regular milk, it could make it sick. There's got to be something online, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. He scrolled for a moment, then nodded. Okay, there's a formula you can make with goat milk. There's a farm supply store about 10 miles from here. I can go grab what we need. I'll come with you, Sarah said, but Marcus shook his head. You've been up all night. Stay with Lily. I'll be back in an hour. After Marcus left, the house fell into a quiet rhythm. Sarah made herself a cup of coffee and sat on the floor beside Lily, watching the fawn. Clover, she couldn't help but think of it by name now, was calm, almost unnaturally so. It didn't thrash or panic. It just sat there, its eyes following Sarah's every movement, as if it understood somehow that it was safe. "Why do you think its mommy left it?" Lily asked softly. Sarah hesitated. She didn't know how to explain the harsh realities of nature to a 7-year-old. Sometimes animals get separated by accident. Maybe something scared her. Maybe she's still looking. Do you think she misses it? I think so, baby. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm glad you found it, Mommy. I'm glad you didn't leave it there. Sarah reached over and pulled her daughter close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Me too, sweetheart. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the world went on as it always did. But inside that small yellow house, something had shifted. 3 lives, a tired nurse, a curious child, and a fragile fawn, had collided in the most unexpected way, and though none of them knew it yet, the bond forming in that quiet living room would soon ripple far beyond the walls of their home, touching hearts in places they'd never imagined. Clover let out a soft bleat, and Lily smiled. It's okay, she whispered. You're safe now. Marcus returned just over an hour later, the back of his truck loaded with supplies. He carried in 2 large bags, one from the farm supply store, the other from the pharmacy, and set them on the kitchen table with a heavy thud. Sarah and Lily were still on the living room floor, Lily reading aloud from one of her picture books, while Clover watched with those impossibly attentive eyes. Got everything, Marcus said, pulling items out one by one. Goat milk, electrolyte powder, bottles, nipples, heating pad, and some gauze in case we need to wrap that leg. He paused, then pulled out a small pamphlet. The guy at the farm store gave me this. It's about caring for orphaned fawns. Sarah took the pamphlet and scanned it quickly. The first page had a bold warning in red letters. Contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitator immediately. It is illegal in most states to keep wild deer without proper permits. Improper care can result in injury, illness, or death. Her stomach dropped. I know, Marcus said quietly, reading her expression, but we're doing what we can until someone qualified takes over. That's all we can do. Sarah nodded, pushing the guilt aside for now. She focused on the instructions for mixing the formula, precise measurements, specific temperatures. It had to be exactly right, or it could cause digestive problems. She worked carefully, warming the goat milk on the stove, adding the electrolyte powder, testing the temperature on her wrist the way she used to when Lily was a baby. When it was ready, she filled one of the small bottles and knelt beside the crate. Clover was standing now, or trying to. The fawn's 3 good legs supported its weight, but the injured hind leg hovered uselessly above the ground. It was swollen, Sarah noticed now in the better light. Not bleeding, but definitely damaged. Come here, sweet girl, Sarah murmured, slowly opening the crate door. Clover didn't bolt. Instead, it took a hesitant step forward, then another, limping badly. Lily held her breath. Marcus watched from the kitchen doorway, his arms crossed. The fawn stopped just inches from Sarah's outstretched hand, its nose twitching as it caught the scent of the milk. Sarah held the bottle close, angling the nipple toward Clover's mouth. The fawn sniffed it, then pulled back, confused. It had never drunk from a bottle before. It didn't understand what this strange rubber thing was. Come on, baby, Sarah whispered. You need to eat. She tried again, gently pressing the nipple against Clover's lips. A drop of milk squeezed out, landing on the fawn's tongue. Clover's eyes widened. It licked its lips, tasting the warm, sweet liquid, and suddenly lunged forward, latching onto the nipple with desperate urgency. Sarah laughed, a surprised, relieved sound, as the fawn sucked eagerly, its small tail flicking back and forth with each swallow. Lily clapped her hands together, bouncing on her knees. "She's drinking! Mommy, she's drinking!" "Good girl," Sarah said softly, her eyes stinging with unexpected tears. "Good girl, Clover." The fawn drained the bottle in less than 3 minutes, and when it was empty, it looked up at Sarah as if to say, "More?" Sarah prepared a second bottle, but Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. "The pamphlet says not to overfeed. Too much too fast can make them sick. Give her a couple hours, then try again." Sarah nodded reluctantly and set the bottle aside. Clover licked her hand, its tongue rough and warm, then limped back into the crate and curled up, its spotted sides rising and falling with deep, contented breaths. For a moment, the three of them just stood there, watching the tiny creature sleep. "I'm going to call around some more," Sarah said finally. "There has to be someone who can take her." She spent the next 2 hours on the phone. She called every wildlife center within a 100-mile radius. Most were full. One said they only took raptors and small mammals. Another explained that fawn season was their busiest time. Dozens of baby deer got separated from their mothers every week, and they simply didn't have the resources to take them all. "What happens to the ones you can't take?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. The woman on the other end was silent for a beat too long. "We do our best." Sarah hung up, feeling hollow. She tried the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife next, and after being transferred 3 times, she finally reached someone who sounded knowledgeable. A field biologist named Dr. Amy Cho. "Let me get the details," Dr. Cho said, her tone brisk but not unkind. "You found the fawn on Route 47 this morning. No sign of the mother, injured leg. You've had it for, what, 4 hours now?" "About that, yes." "And you've fed it?" "Goat milk formula. It drank 2 bottles. "Okay, that's good." "That's actually really good." Dr. Cho paused. "Here's the situation, Ms. Mitchell. Legally, you're not supposed to have that fawn. But practically speaking, you may have saved its life. If the mother was hit by a car, or if she abandoned it because of illness or injury, that fawn wouldn't survive on its own. So what do? The leg needs to be examined by a vet. If it's broken, it'll need to be set. If it's just sprained, it might heal on its own with rest. Either way, the fawn can't be released until it's fully healed and old enough to survive independently, usually around 3 to 4 months. Sarah's heart sank. 3 to 4 months. At minimum. Fawns are incredibly fragile. They need round-the-clock care, specialized diet, proper socialization. Most people can't handle it, which is why we have licensed rehabilitators. But, Dr. Cho sighed, "I'm not going to lie to you. Our rehab centers are at capacity. I can put you on a waiting list, but it could be weeks before we have space." "Weeks?" Sarah's voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do until then?" "You keep doing what you're doing. Feed it every 3 to 4 hours. Keep it warm, quiet, and stress-free. Don't let it bond too much with humans. No excessive handling, no treating it like a pet. And find a vet who's willing to look at that leg. I can send you a list of vets in your area who've worked with wildlife before." "Okay," Sarah said, trying to absorb everything. "Okay, thank you." "Ms. Mitchell," Dr. Cho's voice softened. "What you did this morning, stopping, picking it up, bringing it home, that took courage. A lot of people would have just kept driving. You gave that fawn a fighting chance." After the call ended, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. 3 to 4 months. Weeks on a waiting list. Round-the-clock care. She had a full-time job. Marcus worked construction, gone 10 hours a day. Lily had school. How were they supposed to manage this? Marcus sat down across from her, sliding a mug of fresh coffee into her hands. What did they say? Sarah told him everything. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing over the options. "We can't keep a deer for 3 months, he said finally. That's insane." I know. We don't even have a yard, we're renting. The landlord? I know, Marcus. And what happens when it's time to let it go? Lily's already attached. Hell, I'm already attached, and I've only known it for 2 hours. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes burning. So what do you want me to do? Take it back to the road, leave it in the woods? No. God, no. Marcus scrubbed a hand over his face. I don't know how we're going to do this. From the living room, Lily's voice rang out bright and clear. Mommy, Clover's awake. They both turned. Lily was kneeling by the crate again, her face pressed close to the mesh. Clover was standing, still favoring that leg, but standing, and nuzzling Lily's hand through the gap. The fawn made a soft sound, somewhere between a bleat and a purr, and Lily giggled. Sarah and Marcus looked at each other. No words were necessary. They both knew, in that moment, that they'd already made the decision. There was no taking Clover back, no giving up. We'll figure it out, Sarah said quietly. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Yeah, we'll figure it out. By late afternoon, Sarah had found a veterinarian willing to see Clover, Dr. Patel, a soft-spoken woman who ran a small animal clinic but had experience with wildlife. They loaded the crate into the car, Lily insisting on coming along, and drove across town. The clinic was small and cluttered, the waiting room filled with the smell of antiseptic and the soft mewing of a cat somewhere in the back. Dr. Patel examined Clover with gentle, practiced hands, manipulating the injured leg while the fawn stood still, trembling but trusting. After a few minutes, she looked up at Sarah with a faint smile. It's not broken, just a bad sprain, probably from a fall or awkward landing. Keep her off it for a week, maybe 2. I'll give you an anti-inflammatory to reduce the swelling. After that, she should be good as new. Relief flooded through Sarah so intensely she almost laughed. So she'll be okay? She'll be fine. Dr. Patel stroked Clover's head. You did a good thing bringing her in. She's lucky you found her. As they drove home, the sun sinking low on the horizon, Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror. Lily had her hand resting on top of the crate, and Clover's nose was pressed against the mesh, inches from her fingers. The fawn's eyes were half closed, peaceful, and for the first time since that morning, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. The first night with Clover was unlike anything Sarah had experienced, and she'd worked countless overnight shifts in the ER. The fawn needed to be fed every 3 hours, which meant setting alarms that pierced through the darkness at midnight, 3 a.m., and 6 a.m. Each time, Sarah would stumble out of bed, groggy and disoriented, and make her way to the living room, where Clover slept in the crate, now lined with soft towels and one of Lily's old baby blankets. The house was always so quiet at those hours, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Sarah would warm the formula, test it on her wrist, and kneel beside the crate, and every single time, without fail, Clover would be awake and waiting, those dark eyes watching the doorway as if she knew Sarah was coming. The fawn would struggle to stand on 3 legs, wobbling slightly, and press her nose through the mesh. Sarah would open the crate door, offer the bottle, and watch as Clover drank with that same desperate eagerness, as if afraid the milk might disappear if she didn't drink fast enough. "Slow down, baby," Sarah would whisper, pulling the bottle back slightly. "It's not going anywhere, I promise." By the 3rd night, something shifted. Clover began to relax. She drank more slowly, pausing between swallows to look up at Sarah, her tail flicking contentedly. And when the bottle was empty, she would rest her head against Sarah's knee for just a moment before limping back to her bed of blankets. Those quiet moments, 2 a.m. in a darkened living room, a fawn's warm breath against her skin, the weight of responsibility and tenderness mixing in her chest, became something Sarah looked forward to, despite the exhaustion. Marcus took the morning feedings before work, and Lily handled the after-school shifts with the seriousness of a surgeon. She would wash her hands thoroughly, prepare the formula under Sarah's supervision, and sit cross-legged on the floor while Clover drank. Sometimes she would sing softly, lullabies Sarah used to sing to her when she was little. Clover seemed to like the sound of Lily's voice. Her ears would perk up, swiveling toward the melody, and her whole body would relax. But caring for Clover wasn't just about feeding. There was the medication Dr. Patel prescribed, anti-inflammatory drops that had to be mixed into the formula twice a day. There was keeping the living room quiet and stress-free, which meant no television, no loud music, no sudden movements. There was monitoring Clover's injured leg, checking for swelling or signs of infection, and there was the constant worry that they were doing something wrong. Sarah called Dr. Cho 3 times in the first week alone, panicked about things that probably seemed trivial. Clover's stool was too soft. Was that normal? She wasn't putting any weight on the leg yet. Should they be concerned? Was it okay that she was sleeping more during the day? Dr. Cho was patient every time. "You're doing fine," she would say. "Fawns sleep a lot. Soft stool is common in the first few days. The leg will heal in its own time. Just keep doing what you're doing." On the 5th day, Sarah's landlord, Mr. Kowalski, knocked on the door. He was a gruff man in his 60s with a thick Polish accent and very specific rules about the property. No pets, no smoking, no modifications without written permission. Sarah's heart nearly stopped when she opened the door and saw him standing there, clipboard in hand. "Morning, Mrs. Mitchell, just doing quarterly inspection. Won't take long." Sarah's mind raced. Clover was in the living room, visible from the front door. There was no way to hide her. "Actually, Mr. Kowalski, now's not a great time." But he was already stepping inside, his eyes scanning the entryway with practiced efficiency. He moved toward the living room and Sarah's stomach clenched. This was it. They were going to be evicted. She could already imagine packing boxes, Lily crying, Clover being taken away to a shelter that didn't have room for her. Mr. Kowalski stopped in the doorway of the living room and stared. Clover, who had been dozing, lifted her head and blinked at him. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Mr. Kowalski turned to Sarah, his expression unreadable. "That a deer?" "Yes," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's temporary. She was injured. I'm waiting for a wildlife center to have space." "Huh." Mr. Kowalski walked closer, surprisingly light on his feet for a man his size. He crouched down slowly, his knees popping, and peered into the crate. Clover watched him warily, but didn't retreat. "Little thing." "Her name's Clover," Lily said from behind Sarah, her voice small but defiant. "She has a sprained leg. We're taking care of her until she's better." Mr. Kowalski glanced at Lily, then back at Clover. A long silence stretched out. Sarah braced herself for the ultimatum. Instead, Mr. Kowalski stood up with a grunt and nodded. "My father, back in the old country, he raised a fawn once. Found it after a hunter killed the mother. Kept it in the barn for months. Beautiful animal." He looked at Sarah. "You know what you're doing?" "We're learning," Sarah said carefully. "Good. Make sure you do." He tapped his clipboard. "Legally, I didn't see anything. Inspection's fine. I'll be back in 3 months." He walked out without another word, leaving Sarah standing in stunned silence. Lily let out a breath she'd been holding and grabbed Sarah's arm. "Does that mean we can keep her?" "For now," Sarah said, her voice shaking with relief. "For now." The days began to settle into a rhythm. Sarah adjusted her work schedule, trading shifts with colleagues so she could be home more often. Marcus built a small pen in the corner of the living room. Nothing fancy, just wooden panels he'd picked up at the hardware store, so Clover could move around more freely without risking further injury. Dr. Patel stopped by twice to check on the leg, both times reporting improvement, and Clover grew stronger. By the end of the 2nd week, she was putting tentative weight on the injured leg. By the 3rd week, she could walk almost normally, though she still limped when she moved too quickly. Her appetite increased. She became more curious, exploring the boundaries of her pen, sniffing at everything, the couch, the coffee table, Lily's backpack. She also became more vocal. She would bleat when she was hungry, a soft, insistent sound that echoed through the house. She would hum when content, a low, rumbling vibration that Lily said sounded like a cat's purr. And sometimes, late at night, when Sarah came in for a feeding, Clover would make a different sound, high-pitched and almost bird-like, that Dr. Cho said was how fawns called for their mothers. That sound broke Sarah's heart every time, but there were joyful moments too. The first time Clover jumped, a small, clumsy hop that sent her sprawling, Lily cheered so loudly it startled the fawn. The first time Clover licked Marcus's face, leaving a trail of slobber across his cheek, he laughed so hard he had to sit down. And the first time Sarah came home from work to find Clover lying contentedly beside Lily on the floor, both of them napping in a patch of afternoon sunlight, she had to stop and take a picture, knowing she'd want to remember this forever. One evening, as Sarah was cleaning up after dinner, Marcus came over and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. "You know we can't keep her forever, right?" Sarah leaned back into him, closing her eyes. "I know. She's wild. She belongs out there." He nodded toward the window, where the forest stretched out in the distance, dark and endless. "I know," Sarah said again, her voice quieter now. "But I'm proud of you," Marcus said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "What you're doing, what we're doing, it matters. Even if she doesn't remember us, even if she goes back to the wild and forgets we ever existed, it matters." Sarah turned in his arms and looked up at him. "Do you think she'll be okay, out there?" "I think she'll be more than okay. I think she'll be exactly what she was meant to be." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Sarah sat on the floor beside Clover's pen. The fawn was awake, standing on all four legs now, her injured leg almost completely healed. She walked over to Sarah and pressed her nose against the mesh. Sarah reached through and stroked the soft fur between her ears. "You're getting so strong," Sarah whispered, "so strong and so brave." Clover closed her eyes, leaning into the touch, and in that moment, Sarah made a silent promise. No matter what happened, no matter how hard it got, she would see this through. She would give Clover every chance at life, every chance at freedom, because that's what love did. It held on, and then, when the time was right, it let go. It happened on a Tuesday morning, 3.5 weeks after Sarah had found Clover on Route 47. Sarah was getting ready for work, her first full shift back at the hospital after cutting her hours, when she heard Lily scream. It wasn't a playful scream, or even a startled one. It was pure terror, the kind of sound that turns a parent's blood to ice. Sarah dropped the coffee mug she'd been holding and ran. It shattered on the kitchen floor, brown liquid splashing across the tiles, but she didn't stop. She burst into the living room to find Lily on her knees beside Clover's pen, her hands pressed against the mesh, her face white as paper. "She won't get up!" Lily cried. "Mommy, she won't get up!" Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she dropped to the floor. Clover was lying on her side, her legs curled beneath her, her eyes open but glassy and unfocused. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, her chest heaving with each breath. The fawn's normally smooth coat looked dull, and when Sarah reached through the mesh to touch her, Clover's skin felt hot, burning hot. "Marcus!" Sarah's voice cracked with urgency. "Marcus, now!" He came thundering down the stairs, still in his boxers and t-shirt, and froze when he saw Clover. "What happened?" "I don't know. She was fine last night. I fed her at 6 and she was completely normal." Sarah was already pulling out her phone, dialing Dr. Patel's emergency line with shaking fingers. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "No, no, no," Sarah muttered, hanging up and trying again. Same result. "Try Dr. Cho," Marcus said, already kneeling beside her, his hand on Lily's shoulder. Sarah's fingers fumbled over the screen. Dr. Cho picked up on the second ring. "This is Amy Cho." "Dr. Cho, it's Sarah Mitchell. Something's wrong with Clover. She's burning up and she won't stand and her breathing is—" "Slow down, Sarah. Take a breath. Tell me exactly what you're seeing." Sarah forced herself to focus, running through the symptoms with the clinical precision her nursing training had drilled into her. elevated temperature, lethargy, rapid respiration, unresponsive to stimulus. As she spoke, she gently opened the pen and placed her hand on Clover's side. The fawn didn't even flinch. "It sounds like an infection, Doctor," Cho said, her voice tight with concern. "Could be bacterial, could be something she ingested. You need to get her to a vet immediately, and I mean immediately, Sarah. Fawns can go downhill fast." Dr. Patel's not answering. "Then take her to the emergency veterinary clinic on Maple Street. Tell them I sent you. I'll call ahead and let them know you're coming." Sarah was already moving, Marcus right behind her. They wrapped Clover carefully in blankets, the fawn's body limp and unresisting, and placed her in the crate. Lily climbed into the back seat without being asked, her eyes red-rimmed, her small hands gripping the edge of the crate. The drive to the clinic felt like an eternity. Every red light was a personal attack. Every car that didn't move fast enough made Sarah want to scream. She kept glancing in the rear-view mirror, watching Clover's shallow breaths, counting each rise and fall of her chest like a prayer. "She's going to be okay," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "She has to be," Lily whispered. "She has to be." The emergency clinic was a sleek, modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a parking lot that was already half full despite the early hour. Sarah didn't bother finding a proper space. She pulled up right in front of the entrance, threw the car into park, and grabbed the crate. Marcus and Lily followed close behind as she burst through the automatic doors. A young receptionist looked up, startled, but before she could speak, a tall woman in scrubs appeared from the back. "Sarah Mitchell." "Yes. I'm Dr. Reeves," Dr. Cho called. "Come with me." They moved quickly through a maze of hallways, passing exam rooms and surgical suites, until Dr. Reeves pushed open a door marked Large Animal. Inside was a stainless steel table, bright overhead lights, and an array of medical equipment that looked both comforting and terrifying. "Set her down here," Dr. Reeves said, her hands already moving to prepare instruments. "How long has she been symptomatic?" "I don't know. She was fine last night. This morning she wouldn't get up." "Doctor." Reeves worked with swift efficiency, checking Clover's temperature, 104.3, dangerously high, listening to her heart and lungs, examining her gums and eyes. She inserted an IV catheter into one of Clover's thin legs and hooked up a bag of fluids. The fawn barely reacted. "Is it the leg?" Sarah asked. "Did the injury get infected?" Dr. Reeves shook her head. "The leg looks fine. Healed well, actually. This is something else." She drew blood, her expression grave. "I'm going to run a panel. It'll take about 20 minutes. In the meantime, we'll get her on IV antibiotics and try to bring that fever down." Sarah nodded numbly. She watched as Dr. Reeves administered medication, adjusted the IV drip, and covered Clover with a thermal blanket. The fawn's eyes were closed now, her breathing still rapid but slightly steadier. "You can wait in the family room down the hall," Dr. Reeves said gently. "I'll come get you as soon as I know something." The family room was small and sterile, with uncomfortable plastic chairs and a television mounted in the corner playing the morning news on mute. Sarah sat down heavily, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and fear. Marcus paced. Lily curled up in a chair, hugging her knees to her chest, tears streaming silently down her face. "This is my fault," Sarah said suddenly, her voice hollow. "I shouldn't have taken her. I should have left her in the woods. At least there, she'd have had a chance." "Sarah, don't." Marcus stopped pacing and crouched in front of her, taking her hands. "You gave her the only chance she had. If you'd left her on that road, she'd be dead. You know that. But what if I did something wrong? What if I fed her the wrong thing or—" "Stop!" His voice was firm but not unkind. "You did everything right. Everything. This isn't on you." Sarah wanted to believe him. She wanted to so badly. But all she could see was Clover's glassy eyes, her burning skin, her body so small and fragile on that steel table. 20 minutes passed like 20 hours. Finally, Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, a tablet in her hands. Her expression was carefully neutral, the kind doctors wore when delivering news they didn't want to give. Sarah stood up so fast she nearly lost her balance. "What is it?" Dr. Reeves gestured for them to sit. "The blood work shows a severe bacterial infection. E. coli, most likely. It's not uncommon in hand-raised fawns. They have delicate digestive systems, and sometimes bacteria from formula or water can take hold." "But you can treat it, right?" Marcus said. "We're already treating it. She's on broad-spectrum antibiotics and fluids. If we caught it early enough, she should pull through." Dr. Reeves paused. "But I need to be honest with you. The next 12 to 24 hours are critical. Fawns her age, they can decline very quickly. We'll monitor her closely, keep her comfortable, but there are no guarantees." Sarah felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Can we see her?" "Of course." They followed Dr. Reeves back to the exam room. Clover was still lying on the table, now hooked up to multiple machines. IV fluids, a heart monitor that beeped softly in rhythm with her pulse, a warming pad beneath the blanket. She looked even smaller than before, dwarfed by the equipment surrounding her. Lily walked forward slowly, like she was approaching something sacred. She reached out and touched Clover's head with one small hand. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "It's me. It's Lily. You have to get better, okay? You have to. We need you." Clover's ear twitched at the sound of Lily's voice, and for just a moment her eyes fluttered open. She looked at Lily, really looked at her, and made a soft, weak sound. Then her eyes closed again. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. She turned away, pressing her hands over her face, trying to hold herself together. Marcus's arm came around her shoulders, solid and steady. "We should let her rest," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "You're welcome to stay in the waiting room if you'd like. I'll update you every hour." Sarah wanted to stay. She wanted to pull up a chair and sit beside Clover and not leave until she knew the fawn would survive. But she also had responsibilities. Lily needed to eat, Marcus had to call his boss, and Sarah didn't know what she needed except for Clover to live. They went home. Sarah called in sick to work. Marcus cancelled his jobs for the day. Lily refused to go to school. The three of them sat in the living room, staring at Clover's empty pen, the house unnaturally quiet, without the sound of hooves clicking softly on the floor or the gentle bleating when it was time for a feeding. At noon, Dr. Reeves called. "She's stable. Fever's down to 102.8. Still not out of the woods, but it's progress." At 4 p.m., another call. "Fever's holding steady. She drank a little water on her own. That's a very good sign." At 8 p.m., Sarah couldn't take it anymore. "I'm going back," she announced, grabbing her keys. "We'll come with you," Marcus said. They arrived at the clinic just as visiting hours were ending, but Dr. Reeves bent the rules and let them in. Clover was awake, truly awake, and standing on wobbly legs. When she saw them, her tail flicked and she let out a bleat that was weak but unmistakable. Lily burst into tears, happy tears this time. "She knows us. She knows we came back." Dr. Reeves smiled. "She's not out of danger yet, but she's a fighter. I think she's going to make it." Sarah felt something break open in her chest, relief so intense it was almost painful. She walked over to Clover and stroked her nose through the bars of the holding pen. "Good girl," she whispered. "Such a good, brave girl." That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, unable to sleep, Sarah did something she'd been thinking about for days, but hadn't had the courage to do. She pulled out her phone, opened Facebook and started typing. The post began simply, "3 weeks ago, I found a baby deer in the middle of the road." She wrote about stopping, about the fawn's eyes, about the sound it made that wasn't quite a bleat, but something deeper, something that sounded like a plea. She wrote about the long nights of feedings, the worry, the small victories. She wrote about Dr. Patel and Dr. Cho and Mr. Kowalski. She wrote about Lily singing lullabies and Marcus building a pen and the way Clover's tail flicked when she was happy. And she wrote about today, about the fear that had gripped her when Clover wouldn't stand, about the drive to the clinic and the terrible waiting, about the infection that could still take her life. She attached a photo. Clover lying in the pen at the clinic, her eyes half open, the IV line visible in her leg, but alive. Unmistakably, beautifully alive. At the end, Sarah wrote, "I don't know why I'm sharing this. Maybe because I need you all to know that small acts of kindness matter. That stopping when it would be easier to keep driving matters. That trying even when you don't know if you're doing it right matters. Clover is fighting for her life right now, and all I can do is hope that the love we've poured into her these past 3 weeks is enough. Please send your thoughts, your prayers, your good energy, whatever you have to give. She needs all of it." Sarah hesitated for just a moment, her thumb hovering over the post button. Then she pressed it and set her phone on the nightstand. She didn't expect anything to come of it. It was just a post, just words and a photo sent out into the void. She had no idea that by morning everything would change. By the time Sarah woke up at 6 a.m., her phone was buzzing non-stop. Notifications flooded the screen, hundreds of them. She squinted at the display, confused, still half asleep. Then she opened Facebook. Her post had been shared over 5,000 times. There were comments, thousands of comments, from people all over the country, all over the world. Messages of support, prayers, stories from others who had rescued animals, a wildlife photographer in Kenya, a veterinarian in Australia, a teacher in Maine who used the story in her classroom to talk about compassion. A local news station had reached out, asking for an interview, then another and another. By noon, Clover's story was trending on social media. By evening, it had been picked up by national news outlets. Videos of Clover drinking from a bottle, of Lily singing to her, of the Fawn taking her first wobbly steps in the living room, videos Sarah had posted without thinking, were being watched by millions. The world, it seemed, had fallen in love with a little lost fawn who begged for help, and the family who answered, and Clover, still fighting, still healing, had become something more than just a rescued animal. She had become a symbol, a reminder that in a world that often felt cruel and indifferent, there was still kindness, still hope, still people willing to stop and help. The attention was overwhelming in ways Sarah could never have anticipated. Within 3 days of her post going viral, the local news had camped outside their house. Camera crews arrived at dawn, their vans lined up along the quiet residential street, transforming their modest yellow cottage into something resembling a movie set. Neighbors peered through curtains. Strangers knocked on the door, asking for photos. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, podcast invitations, publishing companies wanting to turn Clover's story into a children's book. Mr. Kowalski had to put up a sign, "Private property, no trespassing." "I didn't see the deer, remember," he told Sarah with a wink. "But I see reporters, and I don't like them." Sarah tried to maintain some sense of normalcy, but it was impossible. Her Facebook page had exploded from 300 followers to over 200,000 in less than a week. Every photo she posted, Clover eating, Clover sleeping, Clover nuzzling Lily's hand, was shared tens of thousands of times. People sent gifts, toys for Lily, supplies for Clover, donations to help cover the veterinary bills. A woman in Denmark crocheted a tiny blanket. A man in Texas sent a hand-carved wooden sign that read, "Clover's House." The outpouring of love was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "I just wanted to help one animal," Sarah told Marcus one night, staring at her phone screen in disbelief. "I didn't sign up for this." "I know," Marcus said gently, "but people need this right now. They need something good, something pure. Clover is that for them." Dr. Reeves called 4 days after the infection crisis to say that Clover was ready to come home. "She's exceeded all expectations," the veterinarian said, her voice warm with pride. "Temperature's normal, appetite's back, energy levels are great. Whatever you've been doing, keep doing it." When they arrived to pick her up, there were cameras waiting outside the clinic. Someone had leaked the information. Sarah felt her chest tighten with anxiety as she stepped out of the car. Marcus and Lily close behind. Microphones were thrust toward her face, questions flying from all directions. "Sarah, how does it feel to be a hero? Will you keep Clover permanently? What's your message to people watching?" Sarah froze. She wasn't a hero. She was just a tired nurse who'd stopped for a fawn on the side of the road. Marcus put a protective hand on her back and guided her toward the entrance. Dr. Reeves met them inside, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry. I tried to keep it quiet. But it's okay," Sarah said, though her hands were shaking. "Let's just get Clover home." The fawn was waiting in the recovery area, standing tall and alert, her coat glossy and her eyes bright. When she saw them, she let out an excited bleat and bounded forward, actually bounded, all four legs working perfectly, no trace of the limp that had plagued her for weeks. Lily dropped to her knees, laughing through tears, and Clover pressed her nose against the girl's face, her tail wagging like a dog's. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered joy, and Sarah felt something shift inside her, a bittersweet ache that tasted like both love and loss. Because Clover was healed now, fully healed, and that meant it was almost time to let her go. The drive home was quieter than the drive there. Clover stood in her crate, watching the world pass by through the mesh, her ears swiveling at every sound. She was curious, alert, more alive than Sarah had ever seen her. This wasn't the trembling, injured creature from Route 47. This was a wild animal, remembering what it was supposed to be. At home, they set up the pen again, but Clover barely stayed in it. She explored every corner of the living room, sniffing furniture, investigating corners, testing her legs with small jumps. She was restless, not anxious but energized, ready for more than 4 walls and a pen. That evening after dinner, Sarah called Dr. Cho. "She's ready, isn't she?" Sarah said without preamble. "To go back." Dr. Cho was quiet for a moment. "Physically? Yes, she's strong, healthy, mobile. But there's more to it than that. She needs to learn how to be a deer again, how to forage, how to recognize predators, how to interact with other deer. That takes time and proper rehabilitation. So what do we do? There's a wildlife sanctuary about 90 miles north, Cascade Ridge. They specialize in preparing rescued animals for release. They have large outdoor enclosures, natural habitat, even a small herd of deer she can socialize with. I've already spoken with the director. They have space for Clover." Sarah closed her eyes. Whenever you're ready. But Sarah, the longer she stays with you, the harder it will be for all of you." That night, Sarah, Marcus, and Lily sat together on the living room floor, watching Clover groom herself in the corner. She licked her legs methodically, her movements graceful and instinctive. She looked like she belonged in a forest, dappled with sunlight, free and wild. "We always knew this was temporary," Marcus said softly. "That was the whole point, right? To save her so she could go back." "I know," Lily whispered, her voice small and broken. "But I don't want her to go." Sarah pulled her daughter close. "I know, baby. Neither do I." "Will she remember us?" Lily asked. "When she's out there, will she know that we loved her?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I think so. Maybe not the way we remember things, but I think she'll carry it with her. The safety she felt, the care, that doesn't just disappear." The next few days were a flurry of preparation. Dr. Cho sent over instructions for transitioning Clover to a more natural diet, fresh vegetation, browse, less formula. They started taking her outside into the small, fenced backyard for short periods, letting her feel grass under her hooves, smell the wind, hear the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. Clover came alive in those moments. She would leap and twist, her movements joyful and unrestrained. She would freeze at the sound of a crow, her whole body tense, her ears swiveling, instincts kicking in, teaching her to be alert. And then she would run, her legs a blur, her spotted coat flashing in the sunlight. She was so beautiful it hurt to watch. The media attention continued, but Sarah started declining most interview requests. She did agree to one, a local reporter named Jennifer Hahn, who had covered stories about wildlife conservation for years and approached the subject with genuine respect. They sat in the backyard while Clover grazed nearby, and Jennifer asked thoughtful questions. Not about fame or viral moments, but about the experience itself, what it felt like to hold a life in your hands. What it taught Sarah about compassion, about responsibility, about the fine line between helping and interfering. "I think what struck me most," Sarah said, choosing her words carefully, "is how much we needed this as much as she did. Maybe more. We live in a world that tells us to keep driving, to mind our own business, to not get involved. And I almost did that. I almost kept going. But something about her eyes, I couldn't. And now I understand that stopping, really stopping, not just slowing down, but actually getting out of the car and doing something, that's where we find our humanity. Clover didn't just need me. I needed her. We all did." The interview aired 2 days later, and the response was even bigger than before. But this time, Sarah barely noticed, because she and Marcus had made the call to Cascade Ridge, and the date was set. 1 week. Clover would go to the sanctuary in 1 week. Sarah told Lily on a Saturday morning, the two of them sitting on the back porch while Clover dozed in a patch of sun. Lily took the news silently at first, her face carefully blank. Then she nodded. "Okay," she said. "Okay. It's okay to be sad, baby." "I know." Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I am sad, but I'm happy too, because she gets to be free. That's what we wanted, right?" Sarah's heart broke and swelled at the same time. "Yes, sweetheart. That's what we wanted." That week became a series of lasts. The last time Sarah fed Clover from a bottle, the fawn barely interested now, more drawn to the fresh clover and grass they left in her pen. The last time Lily sang her a lullaby, Clover's head resting in her lap. The last time Marcus built something for her, a small shelter in the backyard where she could escape the sun. They took photos and videos, trying to capture every moment. But Sarah knew that no camera could hold what they were really feeling. The weight of love, the ache of goodbye, the strange, complicated gratitude for something that had turned their lives upside down and somehow made everything clearer. On the night before they were set to take Clover to Cascade Ridge, Sarah couldn't sleep. She got up around 2 a.m. and went to the living room. Clover was awake, standing by the back door, her nose pressed against the glass. She was looking out at the dark forest beyond, her body still but vibrating with some inner awareness. Sarah sat down on the floor beside her. "You know, don't you? You know you're going home." Clover turned and looked at her, really looked at her, with those impossibly deep eyes, and Sarah could have sworn she understood. That in some way beyond words or logic, the fawn knew what was coming, and was ready. Sarah reached out and stroked her head one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting us be part of your story, for teaching us what it means to care without holding on, for reminding us that the world still has room for tenderness." Clover leaned into her touch, warm and solid and alive, and for just a moment, in the quiet darkness of that small house, two very different creatures shared a language older than words. The language of love and of letting go. The morning they drove Clover to Cascade Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary was impossibly beautiful. The sky was a deep, cloudless blue, and the early summer sun painted everything in shades of gold and green. It was the kind of day that belonged in a storybook, the kind of day that made you believe in new beginnings. Sarah had barely slept. She'd spent most of the night going over the instructions Dr. Cho had sent, double-checking the supplies they were bringing, making sure everything was perfect for Clover's transition. But beneath all the preparation was a current of grief she couldn't quite name. It wasn't the sharp, cutting kind. It was softer, more like the ache you feel when a beautiful song ends. They loaded Clover into the crate one last time. The fawn went willingly, no longer frightened by the car or the motion. She stood calmly, her nose pressed to the mesh, watching the world with alert curiosity. Lily climbed into the back seat and positioned herself right next to the crate, her hand resting on top. She hadn't said much that morning, just moved through her routine with quiet determination, as if speaking would make everything too real. Marcus drove. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, watching the landscape change as they headed north. They passed farms and orchards, small towns with hand-painted signs, stretches of forest so dense the trees formed tunnels over the road. The further they drove, the more Clover perked up. Her ears swiveled constantly. Her nostrils flared, catching scents carried through the vents. She bleated once, a sound Sarah had learned meant excitement, not distress. "She knows," Lily said softly from the back. "She knows where she's going." Sarah glanced back at her daughter. Lily's eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She looked older somehow, like the past month had aged her in ways that had nothing to do with time. Cascade Ridge appeared after nearly 2 hours of driving, a sprawling property nestled in the foothills, surrounded by towering pines and rolling meadows. A wooden sign marked the entrance. Cascade Ridge, Wildlife Sanctuary, where wild hearts heal. They followed the gravel drive to a cluster of rustic buildings, and a woman emerged before they'd even parked. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a braid, and the kind of weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. She wore cargo pants, muddy boots, and a flannel shirt rolled to the elbows. Her smile was warm, but not overly sentimental. "You must be the Mitchells," she said, extending a hand as Sarah stepped out of the car. "I'm Rachel Thorne, director here, and this," she peered into the car at Clover, "is our new resident." "Clover," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Clover," Rachel repeated, nodding with approval. "Beautiful name for a beautiful girl." She crouched down so she was eye-level with Lily. "I know this is hard, but I want you to know something. What you and your family did for her, saving her, healing her, loving her, that was the first part of her journey. Now we get to help her with the second part, and none of it would be possible without you." Lily nodded, swallowing hard. Rachel straightened and gestured toward the sprawling enclosures behind the main building. "Come on, let me show you where she'll be staying." They followed her along a wooden path that wound through the property. The enclosures were enormous, nothing like the small pen in their living room. They were acres of natural habitat, dense forest, open meadows, running streams. In one enclosure, Sarah spotted several deer grazing peacefully. In another, a pair of young bucks sparred playfully, their antlers clicking together. "This is our soft release area," Rachel explained. "Clover will spend a few weeks here getting acclimated. She'll be able to interact with the other deer, learn their behaviors, their communication. We'll monitor her closely, make sure she's eating well, staying healthy, and when she's ready, when she's fully confident in her instincts, we'll open the gates and let her choose. Some deer leave immediately, others take their time. We let them decide." "And if she doesn't want to leave?" Marcus asked. Rachel smiled. "They always leave. It might take days or weeks, but eventually the call of the wild becomes too strong. They remember what they are." They reached a smaller enclosure set slightly apart from the others. It was still massive, at least an acre, but more intimate. A shelter stood in one corner, surrounded by tall grass and wildflowers. A small creek ran through the center, clear and cold. It looked like something out of a painting. "This is where she'll start," Rachel said. "We have 2 other young fawns in the adjacent enclosure. Once she's settled, we'll introduce them. Social bonds are crucial for deer. She needs to learn that her family isn't human." The words stung, even though Sarah knew they were true. They carried Clover's crate to the gate. Rachel opened it, and together they set the crate down inside the enclosure. For a moment, no one moved. This was it. The final goodbye. Rachel stepped back, giving them space. "Take your time." Sarah knelt down and opened the crate door. Clover stepped out slowly, her hooves tentative on the soft grass. She looked around, her entire body tense with awareness. Then she looked back at Sarah, at Marcus, at Lily. Her dark eyes held something Sarah couldn't quite name. Recognition, maybe, or gratitude. Lily dropped to her knees, and Clover walked over to her. The Fawn pressed her nose against Lily's cheek, and Lily wrapped her arms around Clover's neck, burying her face in the soft fur. "I love you," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you." Clover stood still, letting herself be held. Then she pulled back gently and licked Lily's face once, a gesture so tender it made Sarah's throat close up entirely. Marcus stepped forward next, crouching down and running his hand along Clover's back. "You take care of yourself out there, okay? Be smart. Be strong." Finally, it was Sarah's turn. She knelt in the grass, and Clover came to her immediately, as if she understood this was the last time. Sarah stroked her head, her neck, memorizing the feel of her soft coat, the warmth of her breath. "Thank you for trusting me," Sarah said, tears streaming freely now. "Thank you for letting me be part of your story. I'll never forget you." Clover made a sound, soft and low, somewhere between a hum and a bleat. Then she turned and walked away. Not quickly, not frantically, just calmly, purposefully. She walked toward the creek, dipped her head to drink, then lifted it again, water dripping from her muzzle. She looked back at them one more time, and then she kept walking, deeper into the enclosure, toward the tree line, toward the wild. Sarah, Marcus, and Lily stood at the fence, watching until Clover disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Rachel came up beside them, her voice gentle. "She's going to be just fine. Better than fine. You gave her everything she needed." They stayed for a while longer, answering Rachel's questions, filling out paperwork, leaving their contact information in case of emergencies. Rachel promised to send updates, photos, videos of Clover's progress. She told them they were welcome to visit any time, though she gently suggested waiting a few weeks to let Clover fully adjust. The drive home was quiet. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from emotion. Marcus drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding Sarah's. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing that needed to be said. When they pulled into their driveway, the house looked smaller somehow, emptier. Sarah walked inside and stopped in the living room. The pen was still there, Clover's blankets folded neatly in the corner. The bottle and formula sat on the kitchen counter. Everything was exactly as they'd left it, but it all felt hollow now. "Should we put it away?" Marcus asked. "Not yet," Sarah said. "I'm not ready yet." Over the next few days, updates from Cascade Ridge began to arrive. Photos of Clover exploring her enclosure, video of her meeting the other fawns, tentative at first, then playful. Rachel called to say Clover was eating well, sleeping soundly, showing no signs of stress. "She's adapting beautifully," Rachel said. "Honestly, some of the best progress I've seen." The messages and emails from around the world continued too. People wanted to know what happened to Clover. They'd followed her story from the beginning, and now they needed to know how it ended. So Sarah wrote one final post. She chose her words carefully, wanting to honor both the joy and the grief, the love and the loss. "Today we said goodbye to Clover, not because she was taken from us, but because it was time to give her back. Back to the forest, back to the wild, back to the life she was always meant to live." These past weeks have been the hardest and most beautiful of my life. We saved her, yes, but she saved us too. She reminded us that compassion isn't weakness, that stopping to help, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's scary, even when you don't know if you're doing it right, matters more than we can possibly measure. Clover is at Cascade Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary now, learning to be wild again. And one day soon, she'll walk through an open gate and disappear into the forest, and we'll never see her again. And that's exactly how it should be, because love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. Thank you to everyone who followed Clover's journey. Thank you for your kindness, your support, your belief that one small act of compassion can change the world. You were right. It can. It does. And it will keep changing the world, one stopped car, one rescued animal, one open heart at a time. The post was shared hundreds of thousands of times. Messages poured in from people who said they'd stop to help an injured bird, a stray dog, a lost kitten, all because of Clover. Donations flooded into Cascade Ridge, enough to expand their facilities and take in dozens more animals. Schools started using Clover's story in their curriculum to teach empathy and environmental stewardship. A little lost fawn who had begged humans to save her had in turn saved something in all of them. A belief in goodness, a commitment to care, a willingness to stop. 3 weeks after they'd left Clover at the sanctuary, Rachel called. "She's gone," Rachel said, and Sarah's heart stopped for a terrible moment before Rachel continued, laughing softly. "Not gone. She left. We opened the gates this morning for the older deer, and Clover just walked out, didn't hesitate, didn't look back. She headed straight for the ridge with 2 of the other young does. They're probably miles away by now." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes, but she was smiling. "She's free. She's free," Rachel confirmed. "You did it, Sarah. You all did." That night, Sarah, Marcus, and Lily drove out to the woods near their house, the same woods that bordered Route 47. They parked and walked along a narrow trail until they found a clearing bathed in moonlight. The air smelled of pine and earth and possibility. They didn't expect to see Clover. They knew the chances were impossibly small, but as they stood there in the quiet, a deer emerged from the tree line. Not Clover. This one was older, larger, but she stopped and looked at them, her eyes reflecting the moonlight, and for just a moment, Sarah felt a connection, a reminder that the wild was still out there, still thriving, still full of creatures worth saving. Lily reached for Sarah's hand. Marcus put his arm around both of them, and together they stood in the forest. 3 small humans in a vast, beautiful world, changed forever by one small, brave fawn who had begged for help and received it. The world had been stunned by Clover's story, but in the end, it wasn't just about a rescued deer. It was about what she represented, the power of compassion, the courage to stop, the grace in letting go. And somewhere out there, beneath the stars and the ancient trees, Clover ran free, wild and whole, and exactly where she belonged. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever witnessed or lived something like this.